Thanks for joining us. Lightbringer just did a number on me, dude. Like, I've been thinking about this book so much more. It's stuck with me more than your other books have. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. But the one that on my reread, which I finished yesterday, I closed the book and I was like, dang, I can't escape this connection that goes back all the way to the Red Rising. And I know we did it in May, we got together, and we were calling it First Trilogy, Second Trilogy. Mm-hmm. But after finishing Lightbringer, it really feels like 6 books now, and a 7th coming out.
And when the 7th comes out, it'll be 7 books.
Yeah.
It'll feel like 7 books. And I think we have to stop calling it the First Trilogy.
It'll just be the series.
It will be
the series.
And at the end of Lightbringer, it felt like cemented that for me, because even you were like, I'm not going to call it second series for series, and we were trying, all three of us were trying not to.
It's tough. And the reason I did that was that, I learned from so many people they wouldn't start a series until it was finished. So I thought, I was doing the original trilogy, not to freak people out when I decided to do a 4th, 5th, and 6th book and say it's a separate trilogy. You can still finish this trilogy and be happy.
Yeah.
And now I realize I've created a problem. So I interrupted you.
No, you're
good,
dude. You're good. There is the one thing that I was kind of stuck on yesterday when finishing it is that the book ends with that scene where in Cassius's room, we're on the Archimedes again, and they're watching the Hollows. Mm. And I remembered that connection back to watching the Hollows at the Institute, But going back to the beginning of the book, chapter 2, you've got Darrow, telling Pax in his memoirs about that night, that same night. And so you really kind of close that loop. You have this opening of the book and the end of the book with this moment of raiding House Minerva, and it's so transportive.
You caught that, huh?
It's so beautiful. I'm curious though, was that something you were stuck on, or is that something what you were trying to communicate to the readers by kind of going back to those moments in the Institute?
It's the connectivity between people's nostalgia. I think that those were moments, one, that the readers really rallied behind and were kind of the ultimate expressions of the fun side of the Institute and the first mission that Severo, Cassius, and Darrow completed together. And it's really when they became a pack, started. The Howlers didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
It was just them 3. Mm-hmm. And I think often over the course of the series, they forget that and we forget that Cassius was kind of an original Howler.
Weird to think,
right? But also, it was important to me to think that, it was on Darrow's mind at the beginning, and he's thinking fondly about it. It was also on Severo's mind at the end, and Cassius had been watching it.
Yeah.
And it's that's that thing. Those are the things. I don't cry during sad stuff. I cry at that stuff.
Yeah.
And looking at that, because I was thinking how poignant it is that they were, even though they didn't share it and they have all these walls they built around each other, their threads were first woven together in that moment, and the life threads. And all of them recognize it, and all of them look back fondly on it, and all of them looked at that as the halcyon time period at the Institute. And for me, that's a lot of friendships when you're telling a story when you meet a high school friend or a friend you knew you're a kid, and you say, do you remember when?
Yeah.
And their eyes light up because they remember that moment too, and they remember it in a slightly different way. And I think that's a very special moment in friendship. And as I've gotten older, I've started having more of those moments.
Yeah.
So it's probably in the front of my mind.
Yeah, those are your friends, and you're going back to that same, And I feel like, you tell me, but I think that the only way that works is with Cassius being such an integral part of this book, kind of being the heart of the book, as you said in our Q&A. And he kind of upholds that and makes it all kind of come back and coalesce into this brotherhood. And it's just such a sweet, special moment for like a lot of readers. I think for Cassius fans like myself, it was like, I was intoxicating, honestly. Like it was like I'm still riding a depression and a high from the book. And I think that's kind of why I haven't been able to let it go. But it does, again, it also, because, like I said, it makes it feel like we're in book 1 and book 6 at the same time. It's so special.
I think thank you for saying that, but I think one of the things I was very conscious of when I was writing this expansion of the series was knowing that the further you get away from the initial magic of the series, the more you have the risk of doing a couple things. Jumping the shark, betraying the initial concept of the characters, and making the initial part, the initial actions, the initial sacrifices and experiences feel like nothing, Like when, and these are things I felt very acutely in add-ons to some of my favorite series.
Yeah.
Han Solo's death, for instance, felt to me that it diminished all of what came before, to me. And what I didn't want to have happen was for the events in book 4, 5, 6 to diminish what came before. And book 6 was really my way, and those moments are really my way of, just because it ends in tragedy with Cassius, how do you construct a story that, even though it ends tragically, it doesn't diminish anything that came before? It actually makes it better. It makes it feel more real. It makes it feel more meaningful. And upon rereading, when you're rereading that scene in book 1, knowing what happens in book 6, I want the emotions to feel like nostalgia instead of the scene being ruined by knowing what comes. Instead, I want it to feel more meaningful. And so little bits like that in Lightbringer, and in fact, one of the core conceits, or one of the core principles in Lightbringer that I was trying to get across, was that how our lives are often very circular. And it's the moments we had when we were young, and coming back to those moments and finding ourselves again, despite everything that's happened, despite all the new weight on you, is a very crucial task.
I think the book is so cyclical like that. You're like all these little loops kind of being, I guess, closed. I don't really, I think that's too strong of a word, but it does feel like that at times.
Yeah, or more like, how would I say it? It's like the wheel being knit together.
Yeah.
And it's with Darrow going out. Darrow is closing loops wherever he goes. His entire journey is that, even though he's going further and further from the place he wants to go. And that's also key to Darrow, because in the past he would just go there and damn all the consequences, right? But every interaction he has in this, he's closing a loop. With Quicksilver, with the Rim, with the Daughters of Ares, with Cassius, and then it really sets the stage for the 7th. There's very few loops left to close.
Yeah.
Or to tie off, knots to tie off, or whatever you want to call it, threads to tie off. And instead it's most people have had most of the evolutions that they're going to have, and now it's just the results.
Yeah.
The climax.
Just, putting it all together.
Yeah.
We were talking about this on the way down, just like the showdown that this is going to be, the 7th book, and like just our excitement for that. It's going to be so much fun. So one of the loops that really closed, though, that it's Cassius, right? You have an arc, and it's done. Unless there's something else that we don't know yet that you're going to put in. But Jeremy was telling me, when we were talking about Cassius, and on our podcast prior, we reacted to that chapter 84, the Hangar 17B. We were so proud of him, and that was like I asked Jeremy. He said, "I go, what was your reaction to the scene?" And he caught me off guard. He said, "Pride." And I started crying.
See, that's what makes me cry too.
Yeah. And I was just like,
it was,
because I was just quiet for a minute. I was just like, that's it. Like that was the perfect word. And it caught me off guard, and it caught my throat. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, that was what I was feeling, but he gave me the word for it. He can't be ruined anymore. He can't be tinkered with anymore. It's like this, he's frozen as beauty, and like for me, like, and that's I said earlier, is just my favorite character now ever, and part of it is because he's gone, but it's also sad that he's gone at the same time. You mentioned on a Sons of Ares Discord Q&A a couple months before Lightbringer came out, I didn't. This is the first time I heard that, and first time I heard that this question being asked and the response. The question was, "Have you ever cried at a character death?" And you said no, but in this next one, I cried my eyes out. I guess to take you there and to talk about Hangar 17B and just like I guess how that all wraps up, because I want to spend some time on Cassius. Was it the moment itself, or was it more of him being used as an instrument by Lysander, or was it more being in the Archimedes again? What moment really brought that emotion out in you?
It was feeling all the moments coming, or all the moments before. So when he's talking with Darrow in the Archimedes.
That's a great chapter. Yeah.
Thank you. And that was starting to get hard. And I was like,
you're my brother. You're my brother.
Oh God, that's all I wanted to hear, you know?
Yeah.
And then then the moment talking with Lysander, because he's talking to his two brothers, and when Lysander breaks down, and Cassius offers him a way out, and those moments felt like they prepared dread to enter my heart, and the way I write, I can still change my mind, just like my characters can. So in that first pass through, when I'm getting up to Lysander after they've won, I still realized I could have Lysander not do it.
Yeah.
I could realize Cassius doesn't need to die. He doesn't have to. But I'm not thinking of it as I don't have to make that choice. I'm like, Lysander can still make that choice. And then I wrote it that he makes the choice and does it, and I just knew that it had to stay that way.
Yeah.
But when I was writing his section, I was even thinking Lysander can change his mind, and the fact.
Interesting.
But I knew that it robbed everything. It wasn't coherent with where Lysander was at and what's really driving him. It wasn't coherent with the overall tone of the book that I wanted to leave people with, if Cassius didn't die.
Yeah.
And it just felt so right when I did it. And that's what, when he actually was holding him at the end, and he wasn't sure if Cassius could have put the blade in him, or if he stopped short on purpose. And then he's holding him as he's on the ground. And I started crying when Lysander has the bag in his hands, and and I realized he hadn't looked inside.
Yeah.
He still didn't know anything was in
And
there.
the one round left in the gun too.
And so he saved it for himself.
Yeah.
Just in case there's nothing inside, or it's not what he needs, because that was only worth it if he eyed me. And the fact that he took that risk with Cassius' life without even knowing kind of broke my heart.
No, Lysander, you choose. That's the point of it all.
Yeah.
That's what he says to him. And it's like that's what you're just saying.
Yeah.
It's like you choose.
Yeah.
And I love that hearing you say that, because you're giving your character agency over you, even in a way, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's not like I'm possessed. It's you get in that zone state when you're writing, and when you're very lucky, something flows out of you, and it more is like you're Sam Neill with a brush and finding a dinosaur fossil that you're uncovering, and that it kind of reveals itself for you. And so Lysander in that moment for me was even in his mind, he'd prepared himself to have the option to do either one, to not kill Cassius or let him go. He would let him go.
Okay, that's definitive.
Yeah, he would let him go, but Cassius wouldn't go.
Wow. Okay, I never thought that. As a reader, I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way this is permissible. Because Lysander is kind of like, I look at some of his other teachers, that he's that rational transaction of war kind of character, like Octavia or like the astronaut, to me at least. And
here's the thing.
Yeah.
He would have let him go, but I think he knew that he would never go as soon as he knew about the eyed me. And Atlas, one of my favorite parts of that scene is Atlas spilling the beans and knowing he's broken Lysander's heart by telling Cassius, ask him what's in the bag.
Yeah, he spoils it.
So even with his death, he ruins Lysander's life. And that's all Atlas needs to do. He just knows everyone's trigger.
Put the poison in and just walk away.
Yeah, he just put the poison in and then had his head spilled out.
Yeah. It's still smiling apparently though.
Yeah, still smiling. Still smiling. Not a happy smile. So I think that Lysander likes to leave himself options, and then but kind of sets things up to be inevitable sometimes, and then acts like he doesn't have a choice. And that's part of this character flaw for me, is he sets up a situation where there's only one solution, and the solution is like a villainous one.
Yeah.
And it's always done for the sake of something greater, right? So Lysander, so that scene made me cry several times. I think the biggest one was when Cassius has never looked more, or all the things I love about Cassius and admire about him, respect.
As he's pulling the trigger.
He's all those things in this moment, and none of the things I dislike,
That was one of my biggest reactions when we talked on podcast was I think I said it, but it's like, it was blowing my mind. I put my hands on my head, because we just read it. I was reacting to it in real time.
Yeah.
We just reread it and then we record. And I'm like, I can't believe that his enemy. I
might have to listen to that one.
I can't believe his enemy is saying that about him. He's nothing I don't admire right now.
Yeah.
And he's strong. He's brave. He's beautiful. He's all these things and more. And yet I'm pulling the trigger. Oh God, dude, you got us. You got us so good. And there's some speculation about this scene. So you brought some clarity to one moment. That he would have let him leave. Like to me, that's a big.
That's his perfect world. He would
Yeah.
let him leave. That's his perfect world. His perfect world. Cassius doesn't know what's in the bag, and they think they completed the mission, and he goes on his way. So they complete the mission, they kill him, and he goes on his way back to Darrow.
Yeah.
That's the perfect mission, because then Lysander can continue to have leverage to use with Cassius. But as soon as he knew that something was up with the bag, what Atlas brought back,
It's his duty. Like he's sworn oath to protect the. I put it this way: it's like, how can Cassius? How can his honor remain if he's sworn oath to protect the low colors? And that's his whole life at this point. But if he lets a weapon like that exist in the hands of a now tyrant, that's kind of ruining everything. It violates his oath completely.
Oh, exactly. Right.
So he can't leave.
He can't. He can't.
Yeah, but people think he can, and in a way, like they think. I think that also violates Darrow too, because if he goes back to Darrow, the hypothetical of that, he goes back to Darrow, he says, guess what? Atlas is dead. Guess what? There's a biological weapon, and I'm glad I made it back to you. That's for you, that's about a chapter.
What in people's heads makes them think Cassius would ever do that?
Yeah. But also, it cheapens his journey, Darrow's journey.
But I just think Cassius is the guy that goes and challenges Titus. He
gets pissed on. He doesn't even, yeah.
He's the guy that just stands and faces 200 onrushing obsidian, just like, well, guess I'm dying here. And it's like, Darrow, you go, but I'm staying here.
I think that's some of the beauty of the scene for me is, this is not an insult to you by any means, this is a compliment, is that the scene wrote itself. You've done such an incredible job of filling these characters out, of building their arcs, that there is no question.
The work was done before.
As to how Cassius would have acted in this scene. And that, I'm not much of a crier. That's Philip's job.
I'm so emotional, dude.
And I was still processing Cassius's death as well. And that's when Philip asked me, how I felt about it, what I felt about Cassius. And it took me a second. There's a pause in that episode before I answer. And because I think you respected the characters and how they would act in those moments, that all I could walk away with was pride. Cassius lived up to the dream of Io in that he represents honor. And he did what he had to do. And it's incredible.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for saying, and I think for me, he encapsulates that best by saying, I'm Cassius Bologna.
Yes, dude. We talk about that so much.
Philip got that.
I was like, you have to understand this, everybody. I'm calling everyone that listens.
That's his most important thing he's ever said.
Exactly. It's the perfect thing to say.
Drop the ow.
Yeah. Oh man, I get teary eyed about this stuff because it is pride. Now. It is fun, and it's crazy how these fictional characters can get in your head and exist.
But
because they're not fictional, because there are truths that we recognize.
Exactly. Thank you.
And then other people see these truths, and we anthropomorphize them, right? And so then we're really doing is we're talking about a shared truth that is Cassius, and it's a journey of someone we could imagine, and it's things that we recognize, hardships are coming. We're empathizing with someone who's not real because we can imagine to be real. Like what else is like a joint idea, right? America's a joint idea.
Yeah.
Everything is a joint idea.
Absolutely.
Jesus is a joint idea.
It's something to aspire to. Like that to me is also what gets me about Cassius. It's like I want to be like that when I grow up. I said that. Like I want to be like that when I grow
That's
up.
cool.
But I have 2 young kids, and I want to be like that for them. If I can. I don't think I can.
The shield. You can be the shield, though.
I can try.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try.
Oh, all Cassius did was try.
Yeah.
You
And
know? He didn't always succeed. I mean, Cassius's main job is getting fucked up. He
Yeah.
loses to a lot of people,
Oh, yeah.
but he's
Yeah.
always trying. And he's like a reverse. He's like Darrow's a struggler too. All he does is try. He messes up all the time.
Yeah.
The concept is, what's the thing? If life is anything, it is struggle. If love is anything, it is truth. What Pax says to Virginia, and so I think, I think that it's the struggle of being the shield, and that's the truth of you. If you're truly a shield, and then the struggle to actually be one, right? And just because you're not Cassius, you're not 7 feet tall with the greatest chin in the solar system, doesn't mean that you can't also be as virtuous as him.
Yeah. So you mentioned the chin. I love Volga, how she can't help but stare at him.
Some of my favorite stuff. I cracked up when I was writing that.
She's like, he's the most handsome dude I've ever seen. And she just can't, she's just like, what?
And, like Darrow needs him to leave so she can concentrate.
Yes. That's so good. He has to go get on the ship with Lyria so she can focus. But she watches him go all the way up to the ship.
Yeah, just
so
the
good.
entire way. Yeah, I know. Then there's scenes like that. You're just like, man, I wish they had more screen time. Or I think it was screen time, page time together.
Well, I know you're a cinematic writer.
Yeah,
so I get it.
Yeah, so yeah.
Let's go back just a little bit more into Hangar 17B. There's a lot of speculation about this moment where all the strings are cut. Like this is a kind of in the prior chapter 83, and then going into chapter 84. That's a thing. That's like you're a puppet. That theme, and then finally Lysander saying finally all the strings are cut. And then it kind of goes into this dream-like state where there's a hand on the, correct me if I'm wrong, a hand on the black door opens up. He's like a child. Can you go further on that with us, what that means?
Nope.
Thank you. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
Book 7.
Book 7. Okay.
Book 7.
Because there's tons of speculation on what that means. That little mental intermission that Lysander has in the midst of all this emotion and all the strings being cut.
And, I believe that there's breadcrumbs in the earlier books in Iron Gold and Dark Age for that moment. So it's a recurring thing with Lysander, I believe.
Like the piano, maybe, kind of in that same vein?
Certain aspects, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they don't know, but the first line of Red God.
He told us the first line of Red God, everyone. I'm looking right in the camera.
So you know where we're going.
Yeah, I know. Excited for that. We shouldn't talk about that too much more than the whole Luna thing, should we? Okay.
No.
We'll leave that to people to speculate. We wanted to, so Jeremy and I have been talking so much about this. I think what we found so interesting about the book outside of Hangar 17B, that one chapter.
Yeah.
The Cassius arc was, I think, our shared favorite moment of moments of the book, Jeremy, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where we really connected and we bonded over. I mean,
He was the best character by far.
it was his book,
us.
it felt like. And when you get to, I know you said it was Darrow's book, but actually, I think for a lot of readers, the two of us, it felt like Cassius's book. And Severo kind of has, its Golden Sun kind of feels like his book in a way. And then you have other characters just kind of, they own that space.
Morning Star's more like Ragnar's.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, it's always Darrow's journey, but it feels like it's theirs too. We at the end of each episode, we gave our awards. So what we do is we'd read the part and we'd instantly react. Like I said, we'd kind of talk through a few talking points, and we'd come with we wouldn't share it with each other, but we'd formulate opinions and then share them in crosstalk.
Okay.
But at the end, we would go, well, who is your favorite character of this part? Who is your least favorite character of this part? And then kind of these little award sections. So many times, Jeremy, we wanted to say the Path to the Veil was our favorite character in a way, because we felt it was being personified so much. It felt like a character. Jeremy posited the question to me on the way here, why? Why did it feel like a character? What does that resonate with you? What is the path?
I think it's because the path is not a noun, it's a verb. It's a way of doing things. And Darrow and Cassius and several other characters are personifying the path to the veil. And so it feels You ever seen Donnie Darko, the movie? So you know how Donnie can see this kind of ethereal worm that's ahead of people, which is their intentions. It goes out in front of their chests, and it's like he can see through time, and it always leads to where they're going. And that's kind of like the path. It's like leading Darrow and Cassius, and so it's guiding them. And so I think it feels like a character because it's a way of doing things. It's almost like the Force. Now, the Force can be used in a lot of different ways. The path is not the Force.
Right. Especially in the new movies.
Especially in the new movie.
I can force heal you, apparently.
You can do a lot of things with the Force. I personally, if I was a Sith, I'd just be doing Force aneurysms. I wouldn't have to do anything. Aneurysm. Right? Or optical nerve. Yeah,
super easy.
Yeah. And so I think you'll have to tell me why. Because that's my theory. My theory is because it's personified in the characters, and it's also your hope for them, to find a better way. And perhaps it also connects with you. I'm not sure.
I think we're going to have to get there roundabout.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how much it weaves in and out. I think in the lead up to Lightbringer, there's a lot of speculation about who the character Death would be, right? Before we found out it was Cassius. I don't know the big one to me was Severo.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of people thought Severo.
And he's starting to kind of get more distant, and so people kind of thought maybe it would be him. I had in a possibility Darrow, and the way that he seemed to be going was kind of into a dead end. He's such a flawed hero, and he's failing on the front of his home life too, and it's funny because I kind of thought like there's no way out for this guy. Maybe Pierce has to kill him. Maybe that's the only way to kind of put him in the pantheon and kind of save him in that degree. But you used religion.
I used faith.
You used faith, and it's really fascinating, like the how you did that. And I think that faith, it made so much sense in the moment to me. It's like this is the only way that I think Darrow could have been saved. And, you talk about these, we'll call them faith figures, right? And the salvific nature of them. And I think that's sort of why it came alive for me, is because the path saved Darrow in a sense to me.
Cool.
And restored him.
It reached down his hand.
It did.
It pulled him out of the mud. Yeah.
And it's like in every joke, we would just kind of throw it out there like, oh, favorite here, can I nominate the path, right?
Yeah.
But it's like in every joke, there's always some truth.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, we kept wanting to go back to that and going, and there's something about this that just, it feels personified. It feels real to us.
Or it kind of does that for you too as well. But it does feel like it exists outside of her, exists outside of Darrow. It has its own personality almost in a weird way to us.
Well, I think it's what we were talking about with the characters. We were talking about them being personified truths, right? And perhaps the path is the same thing. It's a truth that the characters are discovering at the same time I'm discovering it when I'm writing it. And that truth is, in many ways, it's no less real than the characters are. And so maybe that's what's really drawing you guys to it and us to it, is something that, well, how to say it? It gives hope in a situation where there is no hope and where the sum of many of the characters' decisions without the path reaching down its hand, even though it's their choice, even it's their agency, but without that hope that if they operate a little differently, their lives can be different. And maybe not even different, but the important thing is that they are operating differently, right? And I don't know if you guys have ever hit rock bottom or close to rock bottom, but it's when you there's a switch that flips. And doesn't have to be Jesus or whatever your faith is. But once you find something to believe in, maybe it's even like a better version of you, or maybe it's like to be honorable or to be like Cassius. It's so much easier to find motivation and energy. And all of a sudden, the world feels like it has a purpose. And the horizon seems unlimited, and things aren't happening to you. Life isn't something that's happening to you, right? It's instead something you're making or going through. So I love that you guys said that phrased it like that it was your favorite character, because I never would have thought of it like that. And I find that really compelling. Yeah. And your explanation of it, I think, beats the hell out of mine. I loved it, calling it faith, and because with Darrow, I was at that point, and he was at that point where that was why the book had to have major rewrites, because the path wasn't in the first part.
Oh, wow.
I discovered it through having to, eliminate hundreds and hundreds of pages, coming out of COVID when I thought I'd have my book done, and I was feeling very insecure that I didn't have my book done. I was feeling very low myself, and the path really came to fruition when I was reading the books on Taoism and Stoicism, and it's just a mix of the two.
Okay.
Set in a Red Rising world and some of the life lessons I've had. And so it was more aspirational writing it, to pull Darrow up out of the muck. At the same time, I was finding my footing in the story.
Yeah. They feel like, proverb-like, obviously, like this King Solomon. What were you, you said were you channeling anything else other than those two things? Were you going to like a proverb, or you're going to?
No, mostly those two things. But everything's a gumbo inside you, right? I've obviously read a lot of the proverbs and things like that, but I wasn't referencing them.
Yeah.
My editor, Mike Braff, was hugely instrumental in this, because he was a religion major in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I've always got the history aspect down and the myth aspect down, and he loves the religions. And so he was a great reference point for the Path of the Veil. And in fact, it was his notion that Darrow should have a guide during this time to help himself find his way through. And Mike actually gave me a book on Taoism when I was going through a hard time. And that's how the path came to be. And so much of the credit belongs with Mike Braff on it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got some good things. He's got fuck, and he's got
that one. He's got both.
Oh, yeah. And
wow.
And he's all about the Obsidian Space Vikings.
Dang, dude.
Yeah.
Did you look like backward? Because I think the other thing the path did was it filled out all the way back to book one. Right? It brings us this realism to the Veil. The man with the dew on his cap and the whole work suddenly becomes so much more real. The idea of Ragnar. It's like, what did he buy into? What faith did he adopt? Right? And why is this red faith like so coveted, so cherished by these other characters? And you even get into these moments where Mustang, an atheist, looks at faith and the hope that these people have, and covetous is not the right word, but she longs to be able to hope and believe like they do, and she can't quite bring herself to believe it.
And she hides, almost like she embraces her cynicism as almost even like an ego defense sometimes, because she does covet, really, long at the same time. And the coveting side is why she engages her ego, and then is a little more cynical about it. But the longing is really the truth of it for her, right? And she also fears the faith, too.
Yes, she does.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that for these atheists, otherwise all it is what Carnus said, a villain.
Shout in the wind, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All we are is a shout in the wind. It's how we stand before, and how we fall,
Yeah.
And so if you're an atheist, that's all you have.
That's all.
That and the legacy you leave behind. And the Path to the Veil is inherently humble. It's a journey to a very simple place.
Yeah.
It's not like, 200 pink virgins are waiting for you there.
Yeah.
It's
you never
not-
talk about that reward, like with that. It's not, I think a lot of world religion is incentivized in some way, and this doesn't seem like that at all.
It's home.
Yeah.
That's what it's meant to feel like. It's meant to be feel like simple home.
I think even a moment like the one we brought up with Mustang, it evokes so much emotion in the path, in faith and hope. You spoke of rock bottom, right? And as a person who has dealt with severe depression in my life, it's, and we'll call it near rock bottom at least, right?
Yeah.
You do cling on to those moments, kind of like you spoke about. And you do have that handout and that hope that you cling to. And I think especially, maybe that's what hit me with Mustang in that moment, was she wants that so bad, and I know she can't believe that with her atheism, but it's knowing what I had recovered from and came back from because of that hope that I have, it's just sad to me that she can't partake.
I guess, I have the follow-up to that is like, why doesn't she feel like she can get there when other characters, so many characters around her, are buying in a way? Like, why is it Mustang that's, you think?
Because her identity is intelligence.
Yeah.
And
her intellect is
And
supreme.
her intellect cannot rationalize there actually being a veil.
Yeah.
It's a case of being too smart and being too identified with being smart.
Interesting.
When what's really faith about? It's about letting go of control, right?
Yeah.
Putting faith in something you can't control,
Absolutely.
which is inherently at odds with everything she is.
Yeah. And I'm interested in seeing what you do with that in Red God. Like you have a character coming back all the way from the Rim who's embraced this faith, and now is he gonna take that to his wife? Is he not? Are they gonna? What's that? And I mean,
man,
that seems like a
there's
real.
such a cool scene coming up.
Okay, great. Because it seems like there's obviously stuff there, and because you can't just leave that alone. Like,
well, look at Darrow's journey. I mean, he stood before the Senate and he said, "My religion is the hand and the lever." Like that's what he was when he declared the reign of Mercury, and coming back, a very different man, right? And what does Virginia see when more than I think Darrow has always been able to pierce through her armor, and so she sees his truth. Even when he was covered in mud at the Institute, she saw like there was a man like was it an igneous flame, like he didn't need some other people witnessing him to burn. And she saw already that fire in him. So I think she sees him more clearly, and she'll see the effect this has had on him. She saw it already over the holo. So if she sees it in person,
Yeah, the hollow scene is so good, dude.
Oh, that one was hard to write.
It seems like it. That, and she says, I think one of her last moment in the whole book, because she pieces out after that hollow conversation, right? She said he's lost that one thing that was really holding back. I'm paraphrasing you. His intrinsic is gone.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're able to create a huge vantage point into Darrow that is from her that we don't get even close to from anyone else.
No one else sees him as perfectly as the man who's a POV character. To Lyria, he's a giant.
Yeah.
To Lysander, he's a foil. To Ephraim, he's very far removed. A dick. Yeah, so we just don't get to see it. And so, but from Virginia's perspective, one of my favorite things about her chapters and Darrow's chapters, but particularly Virginia's, is the insight we get into Darrow. But each character gives us a different insight into Darrow. One of my favorite things about Lyria chapters was when she first saw Darrow lying on the medical bed, and he's just huge, and he's covered with all the scars, and all she thinks about is, like, how scary are the people that he's fighting? That he's this fucked up from fighting them, like this guy, and that sense, like when Lyria I love it when characters meet in big epic fantasy series, when a character who's never met, and you get to see them from a different perspective. That was always one of my favorite moments of reading those sprawling epics. And so getting to see Darrow through Lyria's eyes, getting to see Darrow through Virginia's eyes, it's not why their characters exist, which is what makes it so much more fun, because it's almost like a lot of times I read books and it's almost like certain characters exist just to prod along the main character or to view the main character,
Just literary tools.
Yeah, and so when you get to use them as a literary tool to shed some light on the main character, it's pretty fun.
Lyria is so cool in this book, dude. I love her character in this book.
She's coming to her own, man.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch someone grow up.
Yeah.
Because, we got to do that with Darrow and with the brothers and other people, but we're getting to do it all over again with Lyria. It's really fun. I think my favorite chapter with her is mashed taters. Yeah, it's really fun.
Why do you like that one best?
Because she just owns Darrow so hard in that.
Yeah.
She's telling him, like,
here's your hypocrisies.
You're not the boss. Yeah, exactly. Like, you're going to give that speech to the daughters and you're not going to let me go do this. It's like, you're not going to empower me. And she just kind of, she always does this. And Jeremy and I love that she can stand up and emotionally equate herself to characters that are not just bigger than her in stature, but I guess in importance in a way.
Or in
and
station,
she can in station. And she doesn't feel like a Red.
Without giving like an Aaron Sorkin-esque speech.
Yes. Not the walk and talk.
Yeah, or not the walk and talk, or how to say it. Like, I get sometimes very annoyed when characters who haven't done much indict characters who have, and they're not supposed to come across as bratty. Like Lyria initially is supposed to come across as bratty, and then she really starts earning it. And
She's a howler now.
She's a howler now. An eaglet won.
Is that it? Is that the call sign
I think
now?
Eaglet won, man.
Is it, we're going to go with that next book?
I think she has to. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
I don't want to drop Truffle Pig. That's just too fun.
Yeah, Truffle Pig is too good.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Also, one of my favorite characters is well, when she's talking with the ranger. And
Fell.
Yeah, Fell so cool. And she's like, you never get to choose your first call sign.
Yeah.
And he says, what was yours? Badass motherfucker.
That was so good. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I loved that.
He's so short-lived, man.
So short-lived.
Because I actually thought that he lived somehow. I don't know, on the first read, I thought he was like,
Nah, homie got mutilated.
Yeah, he got messed up.
Yeah, but I think that's also a great way of subtly world building because guys can be that badass and then a gold dustwalker comes up and it's like, good night.
That was fun because that was the first time we got to see, well, one of the first times I should say, we got to see what gold would look like through Lyria's eyes, and she couldn't even make out what's happening in terms of her vision wasn't good enough to like see how fast things were even moving.
Yeah, she thought they're over there. They're what the?
Yeah. That was so crazy.
Yeah, and she can't do anything against them. Because if she could, then it all of a sudden demeans all the other stuff we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
As series go on, characters tend to get more powerful. Even characters who are not supposed to be powerful. And so what I've really tried to do is maintain that, like, it would take like 20, maybe 30 Reds in a fist fight to take down like a Peerless Scarred. And having to remember that is really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Because the power bloat is a big problem in series.
I think like toward the end of the book, so I'll preface this with this. So you do a really good job of battle realism, like you just talked about. You know, someone who's badass can come in, and I get these very like Saving Private Ryan or Band of Brothers, kind of like something that tries to encapsulate real war, and a guy can get blown away.
Seraphina. Ajax.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, and it brings a realism. You seem to, in your pacing, you seem to have kind of two speeds of war to me. You have your Dark Age, which is very much like, you know, audio-wise, it's in my ears, subwoofers blaring, confusing, disorienting almost, right? It
is hitting you in the face repeatedly.
It does, and it gives me a sense that I'm in the battle and I'm disoriented almost, right? And that's the Dark Age feel. And then we can fast forward to like Volsung Fa, and you have this ability in the middle of an epic battle to slow the pace down. And there's almost like this sense of, I think of when I fall, or in a moment in athletics, I think I used that analogy when I was describing it, where you know, you're sprinting for a finish line, and you can actually feel milliseconds from then on, right? And you seem to be able to like slow that time down in those kind of moments. I mean, is this something you're intentionally doing to give these fights different feels?
Yeah, very much so. And I would say I have a couple different speeds of war than that even. The battle for Phobos, for instance, introduces how Virginia is in war. And for her, it's math. And she's in the calm of this eye of the storm, which we haven't really seen in that particular way before. Which then, so it's like, how would I say it? It's the slow, as the ships are circling like sharks. And then finally there's an inciting incident. And then things just start, you know, rolling down the hill towards chaos, right? And, you know, how do you keep it interesting from her perspective, right? So I contrast that with Lysander doing the hit you in the face type, which is him coming down in a rain, right? And then contrast that with Virginia doing like math. And then Virginia's on the run and it's high speed again. But then Lysander's kind of doing math. And so it's like going back and forth between them. And so I think of it kind of like as an accordion. You know, and so with tension, you know, how to say it, tension being the sound that's coming out, you know, in my mind for the metaphor. And so it's very intentional. And I love the kind of moments that pop you out of it. Like Darrow going into his Breath of Stone thing. And then he barely notices someone coming into the circle. And then
He's so in the zone, yeah.
he's
in
so in the
flow.
zone, and it starts incorporating the outside world, then starts filtering into those millisecond moments like you're talking about. But he has a vague awareness of it, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's back and feels like cold water's been splashed on him. So I love that stuff, and I'm very glad you keyed in on it because I think it's very important to do in action scenes to make them matter. Like Mad Max Fury Road. One of the wonderful things that George Miller decided to do in that is adjust the frame rate based on the type of tension that he wanted or the shutter speed. And so you see all different types of frame rate in that movie, which can make this image seem jerkier or sped up or slowed down, all depending on what he wanted the audience to be feeling. And I thought that was very neat.
I think my favorite example of that for me in Lightbringer would be the juxtaposition of the fight with Apple and the fight with Fa. Like they feel like different speeds big time.
Well, the Apple, he's just in it because he doesn't have the agency.
Yeah. And when he says so, I mean, Darrow has that line that really stuck with me in this moment where he's like, I'm not enough. And like my form isn't enough. Nothing is enough. And he knows that something has to change in that moment. And then you fast forward to get to Fa, and it's like lots of things have changed. And they're still changing even in the moment where he's embracing. Instead of trying to be that blunt object or like you've said, go through, he's letting something control him. And he's like, and that's those two speeds to me are just like, whoa, like night and day duels. Like they couldn't be different from each other, but they're so fun. And I love those.
Yeah, I think it's fun for me to just think like all the Razor nerds, Razor masters in the society, like studying Darrow and his tapes.
Yeah,
like seeing
it's
him
like
killing.
watching basketball
It's like
players watching film.
Yeah, it's like watching basketball players watching film. And it's like everyone has studied you. Like
That's
you are the
fantastic.
object of attention for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're the object of obsession. Because until you die, how would I say, golds are not angry. Darrow is a gold. They're not angry. They're insulted.
Yeah.
Because he's being better than them.
Yes.
And so there cannot be golds until he's beaten. They can't be Razor Masters until he's beaten. So it'd be like, what was it? Was it not Kobe? Some famous athlete would put his opponents, the guy who's the best, they'd put his face on the mirror every day so he would see it.
That seems very Kobe though.
It seems very Kobe, right? These guys are all Kobe'd, and like imagine Kobe is playing in at the same time as Michael, and everyone knows Michael's better.
Yeah.
Imagine how that would drive Kobe fucking nuts.
Yeah.
He'd have one purpose in life.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of these crazy Razor Masters across the society are like, and I just love that of Darrow not knowing who's coming. Cassius is like, these other guys are pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like that story. That goes back to like what, chapter 4, when Cassius is telling that story about the stag. It's like this isn't gonna be what you think it's gonna be. Like this isn't like that. There's no honor between these two. Like the stag and you are like, yeah, we're not. It's you and the same.
He is still going to put your head on his wall.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah.
So then, what was so? I guess that the story about the stag was. Is there? It's a really open-ended question, and I don't know how to ask it, so I'm going to ask it as best I can. Other than the Apple fight, did that feel to you at all like it was telling something about maybe Cassius's arc or even Darrow's arc throughout the journey? Is there any like correlations there?
For me, it was Cassius's disillusionment began at a young age, but he never recognized it. Like he should have been very disillusioned. He had this romantic idea of a hunt that he was going to have. He has a romantic idea of war and what it's supposed to be like. And then he sees, he's not taking part in this war. And so you see him constantly being surprised at this war. Look when he goes and attacks the Obsidians.
Yeah.
And he thinks he knows what's going to happen.
Pele.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, this is not the war I know.
Yeah.
And he sees all the horror of it. And Severo's kind of looking at him like, you're fresh to war. And he even says that to him,
That honor was the first thing that died.
Yeah, honor's the first thing that died. And Cassius is still having to learn that. And I like his stubbornness. So it's not necessarily like key to his overall arc, but he doesn't want to admit that honor has died. And in the end, he proves that it hasn't.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so
It always comes back, man. We guys this is the Cassius podcast. Let's just rename it and take down the Hell Reaper and put up Cassius.
Yeah, so it's kind of like Cassius, proving the honor exists is kind of a repudiation of his first disillusionment to me. And also he was wrong about the Minotaur, which is interesting to note.
Yes.
He was wrong about him. And I think that's also fascinating.
He didn't want to pick up the scraps of what Darrow was, right?
Exactly. He didn't do what Cassius did. He didn't shoot Darrow at a watering hole and mount his head on the wall. And I think that's also important to note, because Cassius doesn't have to be right just because he's saying something kind of cool. But I think it also shows him how he doesn't understand the Minotaur, and Darrow did. And it also gives Darrow enough of an understanding of the guy to be like, not an idiot going into the situation. He was right. The Minotaur didn't want to kill him in a cheap way, and that saved his life.
Yeah. I think that at first when we came across it, Jeremy, we thought it was like, in a way we thought it was plot armor. But I think when you went back to it, like it was like, oh, like, well, we just kind of, it was the, it's
What's
funny.
that, Minotaur not killing him?
Yeah, because we thought it, because I remember we talked to you at one point and you said something about 007 movies, like the villain explains the entire plot and he's like, oh, and he gives the hero a time to escape. And Jeremy thought, and I first gut reaction, we actually didn't say this, we just kind of talked about it. And we're not being insulting, but we're like, oh, kind of like, that seemed kind of weird, right? And we're like, I guess so. It's like kind of what Pierce doesn't like, but you go back and you reread it again, and you're
with
like,
the stag understanding, especially
the stag really brings a lot of clarity to that.
Is it plot armor if the Minotaur is behaving exactly as his character has behaved the entire time?
Yeah.
Which is he's there for the emotions of it, for the beauty of it,
the majesty of war,
the insecurity that he says when people will say I'm a vulture, picking up Atlanteus scraps, Lysander scraps. The Minotaur's not that guy. He's not Atlas. Now, if it was Atlas, that'd be bogus.
Yeah.
So I think that it's not plot armor when the characters are behaving exactly the way they would behave.
Yeah.
And Severo.
It was a lack of understanding. I'm saying this is a lack of understanding on our part.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you still think that. I think that often plot armor is overused, just like the term fridging is overused. And I think that what's important is characters behave the way that they are made, unless they're importantly behaving in a different way and you're trying to do something with that. So, for instance, if that was Atlas instead of the Minotaur, it wouldn't have worked, Yeah. And also, Lysander was being warned by Glorastes about Apollonius, saying the guy's a madman. He's just in it for the thrill, for the sensation, I think, or something. And
poor Glorastes.
And then again, he was right. So, and Lysander knew that was a risk. But also then that plays into the concept of Lysander and the Minotaur's balance of like, are you going to operate them? You've done it your way. It created some problems. Now you're going to do it my way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like it, but I also like being accused as plot armor because then it lets you analyze the text and see if it stands up to the fact that it might not be.
Yeah, and this is, we talked off pod right before we started rolling about reading speed. And this is one of the reasons why I no longer am afraid to say I'm a slow reader, is because you hit these things, and at first glance, when you're just rolling through, you have these sensations of, like plot armor, like Bond villain, and then you go back and you're like, nah, I got to do this chapter again. There's something I'm missing.
Well, I thought putting sharks with lasers on their heads in there.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Spectre.
I don't know. It kind of worked. It could have. Apollonius would do that. Like he'd be like, yeah, let's put some lasers.
Oh, Apollonius and what? Not Bond villain. What's in Austin Powers? Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
Apollonius and Dr. Evil would have a great time together.
That they would.
I would love that.
But you get the context. You get the reading comprehension after that, right? And like you said, you do the work ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you create these arcs, and you create these characters, and then they flow through the story. And you find, this actually is what Apollonius is all about.
Yeah. And I think that there's a great insecurity when you're writing sometimes that in a situation like that, you will think that it is ludicrous or it is plot armor. And so at certain points, just like the path, you have to accept that these are what the characters would do in your ridiculous world, in your crazy, made up world that I made. But sometimes you even get insecure about that. And then you just really have to trust that the characters, are they behaving the way they would behave? And I was just thinking how upset Apollonius would be reflecting upon that moment.
Yes.
That he killed Darrow like that. Even in his own mind, what does he have to look forward to then? In my mind, he's delighted that Darrow escaped. He's like, that plucky bastard,
He wants that. He's the Joker, right? He wants that relationship with Batman, almost in a way that's like.
He's very much. I never thought of that. Very much. What would I be without you?
Yes.
Very much so. I mean, look how delighted he was, when he was working with Darrow, when they were clearing off the top of the Ash Lord's spire together. He loves being on the same side as Darrow, but he also really wants to kill him.
And that's like, I guess I see that. That Joker thing, I just popped in my head right now.
Dude, it's 100% accurate. Yeah. What would I be without you?
Yeah. Like you complete me or whatever that. That was words that he says. So, okay, this is a tough one for me to voice.
Okay.
Because I think that Jeremy and I have been wanting to ask you this for a long time. This is really just more for us, I think, than anyone else. So it's going to be a long, meandering thought that's going to eventually turn into a question.
I'm curious.
Kick back and relax.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, just put up your feet. Yeah. Okay. The whole series, the idea, or there's like a theme, I don't know what you want to call it, idea, theme, quality of mercy and what its role is in the series. I think it really gets expressed in Iron Gold as the world gets bigger and gets more complicated. You have this line that really unlocks the book for me in Iron Gold: mercy emboldens evil men. It's this Arcosian saying that gets brought up twice, once by the Duke of Hands and another time by Mustang at the end of the book. You go into Dark Age, the theme keeps reoccurring, keeps coming up. You go into Lightbringer, and it's explored by both antagonists and protagonists. And Kalendora and Lysander have a conversation about this on Mercury, and who deserves mercy? What's the justification for
Cruelty is a thermal runaway.
Yeah. And so in here, you get to some quotes here from Lightbringer. I mean, you have Darrow right off the bat. There's no mercy, go unpunished. Just exploring that idea in his head, still wrestling with this idea. You have, several, I believe in chapter 11, yes, that, we've been too merciful. We had Atlas, and we let him go. We had Apollonius, and we let him go. We're pixies, he says. We've messed it up.
Yeah, we don't deserve to win.
Yeah, exactly. And then the line that really it makes me explore this in my head so much is, you more than anyone should know the perils of mercy, more than anyone except for Darrow. I think it seems like a lot of times you express mercy as a defect, but yet that's what we want from our characters. We want our characters, the protagonists. We want Darrow, we want Cassius, we want them to be merciful, yet mercy, or Virginia as well. Yeah, every time they exhibit mercy, it's to their detriment. Every time you bring this up, because there's lots of quotes about mercy in this series, I feel as if you're putting a mirror up to me and asking me what I think. The question, as weird as it is, what is your thoughts and what is your intention with mercy in the Red Rising world?
Great question. The whole thing can be summed up as, if Darrow and Virginia knew how everything was going to turn out in books 4, 5, 6, would they still spare Lysander's life when he's a child? That's the entire question.
I even think about it from Virginia's standpoint. Would she give up so much power as a sovereign? Because I think her giving up some of her power, even the things like...
But let's take it back to that single decision.
Go.
Would they kill Lysander when he hasn't done anything wrong?
10-year-old boy.
Would they kill a 10-year-old boy, even though he gave her the scepter? Would they go back to that moment and kill him? If they would face that moment again at the end of the series, would they... So, for instance, if there was another heir of empire, so to speak, let's say there's a Lysander clone. There's not. Let's say there's like a Lysander clone.
I'm doing that twice.
It just keeps going. The next series, Red Falling.
You heard it here. Another clone.
Red Renewing. Yeah. Let's say book 7 ends. There is a Lysander character, like a Lysander clone or something. It's like 10. Do they kill him, knowing what they've learned about the mercy in the past? And what does that say about the morality if they do? How do you feel as a reader about that?
Exactly. That's why I feel like you're asking me.
That's the entire point of it. And I'm not going to tell you what my intention is, because I can't, because the book has to represent it. I also think certain things should be represented by the material, and if I tell you, then I'm making up your mind for you, and I don't want to do that. It's the same way I do politics in the books, And so I think by book 7, you'll be able to tell me that answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Jeremy, you want to follow that up?
Yeah. The idea is very interesting. and you don't try to impart too much, right? But it still feels philosophically more like Hobbesian to me, right? Because in fact, if mercy can embolden evil men, right? If they can rely on that, if you go back to your analogous, like, do you kill baby Hitler kind of question, like you have to believe in a flawed, fallen world, essentially, and. So, I mean...
But that's a different thing. Because if we go back and kill baby Hitler, we already know what Hitler will do.
Right.
But if there was another child who... We don't know what he's going to do. But he could go wrong. It's the same situation, same circumstance. You know? It's not predestined. He could go wrong. Big chance he might. Do you have faith that there's hope? Do you walk the path to the veil? Or do you believe in the Hobbesian world?
Right. Well, we know what Quick does.
Yeah. We know what Quick does, exactly. Right. We know what a lot of these characters do. And a lot of characters, what they would do at certain times. And it is Hobbesian. It's meant to represent that. Okay. But also think about how Darrow got a lot of his best friends. You know, it was mercy to Cassius that allowed Cassius to have this arc. So just because these warnings are all around the Red Rising world about mercy, mercy has also given a lot to Darrow. It saved him in many ways. Mustang not greasing Darrow in the tunnels, you know. Cassius having mercy and not killing Darrow for killing his brother when he has Darrow in his power. Many times throughout, the best relationships are created when someone takes enough of a risk to have mercy, which is exactly what Calendora says. No one can afford to take the risk to have mercy, right? So mercy comes with great risk. So do you still take the risk in the face of a Hobbesian world? That's the question.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh. Okay. So
Leviathan's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
by the
there's
way.
just so much more to talk about, like Quicksilver and more Mustang, more stuff, but we're going to wrap up there, Pierce. So yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us. And we'll hopefully, we have 30 more minutes?
Let's run it.
Oh,
yeah, they were giving us a 1 hour marker.
Okay, cool. Can we steamroll through the break, Jeff?
Let's just go. Yeah,
let's steamroll through the break.
Let's through.
Yeah, we got 30 more minutes. I'm sorry, I
I
misread
go to
what you
Fugue
said.
State when we're talking about this fun stuff.
Give us like a for the hard close though. Give us like a 10.
Yeah, I have my. So we're at 4:30. We're out, hard out. Like
yeah, we're gonna be out the door at 4:30.
Okay. No, is it 4:30?
3 sessions, so 1.
Gotcha. Is it 4:30 done recording, or is it like be out of the door
It's
at 4:30?
3:50.
Thank
It's
you.
3:57 right now. Okay.
Yeah, let's just roll.
Sweet.
Beautiful. Flag us to wrap up.
No, we're just rolling into this. This is the last 30 minutes or so. We're just gonna keep going.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate the clarity.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Where were we?
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
we were like,
Let's get in it. Let's get it. You get the
Okay.
juicy ones now.
Yeah. That one I've been thinking about. I'll pick it back up. Is that cool?
Yeah, all good.
We had been thinking about that mercy thing so much, like the idea, the concept, and talking about it. We don't bring it up much on our podcast because we're not authorities on this series. We're fans. I mean, and we're speculating. So we don't want to always just try to answer for you. And that's why, but last time I wanted to ask that question and I was like, we don't have time. And also it's just going to deviate. So thank you for
That's
that.
been percolating. Yeah.
So it's been asked at the right time.
Well, so much of this is me exploring themes as well. And through the act of writing, I'm finding and discovering answers, and my own theories evolve as I go. And that's not to say that anything is contradictory, but it's still an exploration. That's what I look at writing as. And that's why I'm not so confident as to preach to my audience what the right way is. And that's also why I'm hesitant to take a stance on a lot of this stuff, like, give you an authoritatively what mercy means in the series or what I believe in it.
Yeah.
Because I think that if I say something that isn't represented in the text, then it feels a little bit like retconning my themes. Or it feels like I am now setting the sandbox up for you guys and telling you you're wrong.
No.
When that's something I'm uncomfortable doing. Uncomfortable doing that with a lot of things, a lot of the themes and a lot of the politics in the series.
Well, it does seem like you just ask questions to the readers, not preach to them. And
I hope so. Thank you.
I think I get a sense that most likely you're asking yourself those questions actually, and it just comes across to us as if you're asking us. Is that
Good.
right?
Yeah. The characters are test cases. These are hypotheticals. in this hypothetical situation, it's like, then what is the answer? Sometimes there's probably a more authoritative answer in some of the stuff, but allowing a reader to see both sides of the coin, both sides of the argument, and then to make their decision, I feel is far more compelling and sticks with people longer and sticks with me when I'm a reader than being told by someone which then turns into a lecture. And I don't know about you guys, but when I feel like someone is lecturing to me, I shut off.
Yeah.
I ego defend. And part of the beauty of sci-fi fantasy is that it's not seeped in the politics and the social stuff of our world. More so, you enter into a world that functions by a certain set of rules, and then you're able to drop your guard. If someone tells you something that you don't agree with politically, in this world, you're more likely to go into ego defense or disagree with them based on our totally different upbringings, perhaps, or totally different religions or ways we've seen the world or trauma that's happened to us. All these things shape our opinions in this world. And so when you go into another world and go in sci-fi and fantasy, then you can meet in almost like an agora. Think of it as a public agora, and then find out what is essentially true. Because you can discuss ideas without all the attachments that you would have here, without the defense of an ego. Like, say, for instance, someone has a different opinion on immigration from you, probably influenced by myriad factors, which you know nothing about in their life. Right? And then you perhaps have a different opinion than them, and so then you kind of wall up, and it oftentimes can turn into an argument. Not saying that to you particularly, but I don't want it to turn into an argument between me and the reader. It's a discussion when it's more so, how about this hypothetical? And I feel like that's more fun to deal with and also leaves a better impact.
I think that positing an idea and letting us ruminate on it gives us, honestly, your books are great for podcasting. Because that conversation is more natural that way.
Yeah.
If you were steering the morality of like mercy, for example, if you're steering the ship on that, we couldn't have conversations about that as much as we do. Like, we went super deep. So mercy emboldens evil men is a thing. We hyper focused on it. And I was Google searching it. I was like trying to find it. I actually found, and Jeremy read it, Timon of Athens. There is actually a parallel quote that is almost identical.
What does he say?
It's Shakespeare.
But what is the quote again? Do you remember?
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's very similar to mercy emboldens evil men. It's almost a parallel. And so Jeremy
please follow up with me and send that.
Yeah, Jeremy read the whole play.
Yeah,
because it was like we wanted to understand.
I've not read that play.
We were trying to understand.
Maybe I did. Shit, I don't think I did.
We were trying to understand your idea of mercy, so we were going those layers deep.
Yeah.
But if you told us exactly, I mean, I can ask you, but if you told us in the book so directly, we wouldn't do those things and we wouldn't explore and I think better ourselves. I think Jeremy bettered himself by doing that, and he informed me on it, like, because I didn't have time to do it, but we were able to have a talk about that book.
Well, I think
that's really cool.
And those are the lessons passed down to us by the great writers. Like Dostoevsky is exploring things. He's not offering judgment. He's saying this is. And then, you get to offer judgment or sympathy based on what you think. Tolstoy is a little bit more giving things. But yeah, it's those writers which always made me keep thinking about it, long after I've read the book. I'm driving and I idly am like starting to think, what did they mean by this? Yeah, like Cormac McCarthy, for instance, does that. He just presents what is, and then lets you find the themes, like search for the themes,
Yeah, and very much the same way, it has that same sort of Hobbesian feel where the town in which Shakespeare sets the play, there's the wealthy aristocrat benefactor. He holds court and he just gives away all of his possessions, and he essentially continues to give and is taken advantage of until he has nothing left. And then he becomes disillusioned. He has hate for these people, and it really just. It's a fascinating thought piece, really. It just plays with the tension between those two things of like,
fascinating.
He goes off, he becomes recluse, and and he's kind of fighting against reality of that Hobbesian view of life.
Cool. I mean, I'll have to check this out.
Ready?
Yeah.
Nothing emboldens sin so much as mercy.
That's a great quote.
It's so close to yours,
Yeah.
and you didn't even know it.
You're like
that's
a
just-
regular Shakespeare.
That's cool. Well, that's the fun thing is when you find something like that. What I think of it as is you stumble onto an essential truth, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And how happy I am that I like my version better.
I do too. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It gets right to the
It's not
point.
often with Shakespeare you can say that.
It's more, it cuts.
Yeah.
There's a flow to his, yes, but yours cuts, it gets direct to the point. And when it's said from the Duke of Hands, you just whap, just in the face of
I
Ephraim.
love villains given
Yeah.
wisdom. I love villains spitting
and it
wisdom.
feels like that. It's like whoosh, like
yeah.
whoa.
Atlas has some of those in this one.
Well, he says that other one about mercy. It's like, it's been his downfall. Darrow's downfall has been mercy, and it's been yours too. So like, knock it off. And but
Knock
yeah,
it
it's
off.
imparting that wisdom, and brings me to something with Lysander. With the end of the book, you get to this moment between him and Pallas, and Pallas Al Greca.
Yeah.
The most gold name you've ever came up with.
The most
But-
gold name.
That is like the gold of gold names.
I love it. I love it.
I was like, dude, wow, okay.
Chill out,
Chill
Paulus.
out, man. Like slow down.
I love
We get
that.
it.
Yeah.
No, I believe she's the one who asks him in the Garter, how did you get here? What made you do this? And he says, I was shown how the world's worked. I wanted a lot more from that moment, to be honest with you. I like what it was, but it felt like I think I told Jimmy, I was like, oh, here we go. He's gonna give this epic Lysander speech. It's gonna be this thing. And even though I hate his guts in this moment, I'm still ready for this long, I guess he's gonna try to make himself look moral and awesome in this moment and kind of, I don't even know, just trying to make himself look awesome.
Sure.
And it was just a sentence. Like, I've shown how the world's worked.
And the fact that he didn't do that is that he knows how the world works.
I was going to ask you, what made you
Brevity,
get that point?
conciseness. He gave the best speech of the book to in the Colosseum of Rome.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Why would he have to convince her? Results.
Yeah.
Succinct. He's taken the Garter. He has nothing to prove to Pallas.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to convince her of his morality at that point because it doesn't matter. The first time Pallas has given him respect is when he's shown that he has guts and resolve.
Yeah.
That's
And
all.
he produces results.
And he produces results. He knew his audience.
And that's
there.
very gold of him, right?
Yep.
It's like, I got it done.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so, I mean,
And so for me, that's exactly the point.
okay, I get it. But I wanted to ask you how you arrived at that, because I think that as I'm writing the page, I'm like, here we go. And then it's like single sentence. I'm like, oh.
It's because he just killed his best friend. It's almost like, to me, he thinks explaining himself completely in that situation is beneath him because of the results that he has garnered. Now going back home, perhaps spitting out, talking to the other golds, way different. But to Pallas, an operator, and especially the lesson was taught by Atlas, and the simplicity of it is that Atlas just showed him how the world works.
Yeah.
And so I loved the succinctness of it too. But also I thought that at that point, it hits home if it's just one word. It's almost like dismissive.
Yeah.
So it was effective for Lysander because he's over it.
The progression of character.
Yeah.
The final form of his character.
Well, it's the same reason I chose to kill Ajax in that way.
Yeah.
The whole smallness of it was the point. It felt like it was going to be this huge thing. And he just got too far ahead of his team, too big for his britches, and that's war.
I was going to bring up Ajax because that's another one that Philip and I talked about in the run-up to the pods, is how much of an arc he's going on. Like, he's changing, he's coming around. We've filled out his character so much. You essentially are winding the spring in the watch, and you're about to get to watch it tick, but instead, he's just gone.
One of my favorite my favorite lines in the book to write was Lysander saying, all we've done, that moment in Rome, Ajax, all we've sacrificed, we can't retreat. And he's like, and what was this all for? If we've lost? And he says, oh, no, what was it all for? And Roan just looks at him and says, it's war.
Yeah.
This is war. And it's Lysander's first introduction to the Hobbesian world in a way. And Ajax, and I get it, like, one of the things I had written for this, which would be kind of maybe fun to throw out there one day, is this like 14-page duel between Diomedes and Ajax.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That was originally at the end of the book, but it didn't ever feel right, and I rewrote and wrote that thing so many times, and damn, it was fun to write, and damn, it was cool, but it didn't work. It was drawing the conflict toward what I thought the audience wanted, as opposed to where it should go, which is the conflict has to be between Cassius, Lysander, and Darrow near the end of the book. And two characters, Diomedes and Ajax, where I really like them, they were taking too much attention away from those people at the end of the book. And thematically, it wasn't working. It just wasn't, the book was getting lopsided for me. And so then I brought Ajax to the front of the book and built him up in a different way and had him die in a way that feels almost like disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I felt like that said more about war, more about his character and his overconfidence, and the shit can go wrong than anything that was in the last half of the book. I mean, I even wanted to put a degree of separation between us actually seeing it. Like
on the holo that he's watching after the fact.
Just shitty drone footage.
Yeah.
Just after the fact. And it's like Ozymandias saying, like, I did this 20 minutes ago at the end of Watchmen. It's already happened. There's nothing he can do to affect it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even close because Ajax just got tactically outmaneuvered.
Yeah, his hubris got the best of him in that.
Yeah.
He's like, I can go and do this, and like, sweet, go for it, bro. And
Yeah.
then,
But you know what?
never mind.
There's other wolves out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that you can sometimes forget when he can kill anyone in any room, anywhere. Even Darrow, probably. Like Ajax against Darrow.
Close one. Breath of Stone Darrow, or I mean,
Breath of Stone Darrow, I don't know, but Darrow says like fighting Ajax is like being dunked into cold water.
that scene in the prologue of Dark Ages, yeah, it's so good.
And I always wanted to get them together again to have another fight, and I desperately wanted to see Ajax fight Diomedes, and I know that it doesn't feel like the catharsis like the reader necessarily wants, because I know I wanted that other sort of catharsis, but everything is a trade-off, and I thought that the bringing his death forward in a different way taught different lessons, and also removed a shield from Lysander, much like Ragnar dying. For Darrow did, and it made Lysander far more exposed and vulnerable, and also seeing how he keeps having to sacrifice friends to get to the throne.
So we have Idme instead of Edme. Diomedes. Or how'd you just say
You can call him Diomedes or Diomedes.
Okay, just making sure we got the pronunciation,
Diomedes,
guys.
yeah.
You're the
Yeah. I mean,
the source here.
But there's many different spheres, many different accents.
Yeah, you've told us
so,
that.
if you say it wrong, I'll just pretend you're Venusian.
That's right.
Cautious.
Yeah. Cautious.
Yeah. Cautious.
A couple hours ago, you it's funny now, but you talked about subverting expectations, right? And I have a hard time with that, and my mind is actually going back there right now. I was thinking about that as you were responding to Philip, and I think that normally I'm okay with it, but I think with great novels, it's very difficult because as we're going through these beats, as we're talking through these questions, suddenly I go, "Oh, Ajax, that's right. There was one that I felt in the moment, right? The lead up to the possible speech that never happened, the Cassius death, right? All these things could be something I consider to be one of those expectations. But I think with a great novel, in hindsight, once you get to the end, especially after a reread, and you understand it holistically, I don't think anything is subverted. And I think it hides and covers over those first initial thoughts until I'm reminded of them. And I think, to answer your question from back then, that's how I feel about Lightbringer.
Interesting. Yeah, and that hopefully is a sign of a work that is at least internally coherent. because you can feel like disappointed, violated, let down by certain scenes in the moment. But then if you look back on it, it feels like it was always there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's hopefully the sign of a holistic thing.
I mean, Darrow on the garbage barge was one of those
call
for
it
me
the
as
garbage
well.
barge.
Yeah.
The garbage barge scene.
Were you surprised about him on the garbage barge?
It was because I didn't take into context the path, because
Yeah.
I didn't see his transition yet. And as it was unfolded later on, it all made sense.
Yeah.
But in the moment, looking back on his depression, on just the emptiness he feels, the identity crisis he has from, going from thinking he's great in I'm not going to call it the first trilogy. In the beginning of the series.
Don't you dare.
In the beginning of the series.
In his youth.
Right. To the Philip, help me, prologue of Iron Gold, right? Where
He's struggling, and you know this obviously, and he's struggling. They call him many different names, like father, savior. I can't remember all of them, but he feels like a boy.
King,
he feels like a boy.
yeah, he starts to separate himself with those things, right? And so you jump from that, and then the apex of that is, of course, Dark Age, where nothing is going right, and now they're on the back foot, and suddenly he's beginning to grasp the hope, right? And it's that transition that you made. I remember feeling that in the moment, right? And talking to Philip and saying, I don't mean to say this about Pierce, but I just don't think Darrow would act like this. I don't think that's where he is with his mental and emotional state.
In
right
which
now.
part? In
The garbage barge.
Oh, the garbage barge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then as we continue, what?
I love calling it the garbage barge.
I
It's
like
funny.
it. Yeah. And as we continue, it's
Where's
like
your trash moon? Like
Trash moon.
my editor, trash moon.
And again, it's the coherence of the book as a whole, and in retrospect, understanding the impact of that hope and that faith had on Darrow. And now I can look back and go, that makes complete sense.
That was
to me.
always meant to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting, particularly when you're this invested in a series and you think, you do know the characters so well. And the character will never be the character I know. The character Philip knows will never be a character you know, because we shape them. And that's what's so different from books from movies, is that the eye of the brain of the reader is far more powerful than the eye of the beholder. Because when a movie is there, it is like sealed in amber. That's what it always is, right? But a book will have constant permutations based on your brain interpreting words, based on the rest of the experiences you have in your life and the associations you have. And so that's why I think the magic of books is that each of us will have a different character in our head that it could be 99% the same. Yet we'll always have a little bit of difference. And right there, you're seeing the cognitive dissonance between what you think the character should be doing versus what you think I'm doing with him. But you don't yet know what I'm doing with him. Yeah,
exactly.
I know it's a fun. Long series are fun like that because there's like a territorial thing. Like, how dare you do my boy like this?
Yeah. And that's what Reddit's for.
I mean, yeah. But there's a lot of readers that told me in Dark Age that they and in book 4 and 5 that they started disliking Darrow. And I'm like, oh, you dislike a warlord who destroys planets and calls down bombardments and massacres people by the thousands. You're probably on this.
Good on you.
Good on you. Yeah, exactly. You dislike an asshole who doesn't listen to his wife. Good on you. You dislike someone who frees probably the most dangerous prisoner in the Republic. Good on you. Yeah. You're supposed to not like him, but you're supposed to still be like, I love him still,
Yeah.
So it's like, it is really interesting because I can have an intention and then I get to see if it plays out that way in the eyes of the readers. It's conversations like this where I can see. And your disillusionment at the garbage barge is fantastic, right? Because you're arguing against it. You're frustrated at him.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the point in a way.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do some quick hits. So there's a lot of characters in Lightbringer.
Yeah.
And there's some new ones, and there's some ones that were like...
Can't kill them off fast enough.
I know. There's some new ones.
You do a decent job.
Try, man.
really
try.
Well, you'll probably be some big ones in Red God, I'm assuming. But there's a lot of tertiary characters that are really cool. And I want to just ask you, before we get going, I want to ask you to try to give us one fun fact, maybe about this character that we don't know, but they're like kind of on the periphery of the book. My first one that I really liked in this book was Kyber.
Kyber.
Kyber is so interesting to me. I think Kyber could be anything or anyone. Like I don't. It could be deep cover agent. I have no clue. But is there something like a little nugget of info you can give us on Kyber?
It's hard to say what could jeopardize things.
Yeah, I know. That's what I
ask
know.
me,
You
like, what kind of nuggets do you want?
what do you think, Jeremy? What kind of nuggets are we looking for here?
I was just trying to it's the unfinished journal kind of question, right? It's like in your head, how do you catalog these characters? It's something that may never make the page, I think. Is because it's not fair to ask you something that might come out.
Yeah, we don't want to step on the Red God toes.
Or like, where is his art going? That's not, I don't think that's the spirit of the question.
Yeah, it's like, where did Kyber, maybe if you could, I mean, where did Kyber come from?
So what's interesting is Kyber is part of, like, the Whispers are meant, they're raised differently.
Even Whispers seems, it's still new to us, right?
Yes, and it's not been explained really, so that'll be the nugget. The Whispers are not raised like the rest of the Greys or the Praetorians, which are raised in kennels, like not actually in kennels, but they call them, they refer to them as like dogs and kennels, like hounds of war, etc. And when like Roan's talking about his pack and his kennel, all of them went to the Praetorian Guard. Whispers are bred more so to have almost like a deeper fidelity to golds, to an individual gold. They're meant to be codependent almost. So they're a type of bodyguard that has psychological conditioning that is far different, and so they don't have as much loyalty to the legions. They don't have as much loyalty to the kennels,
to that singular person.
Exactly. So they're more so like a stray that's been brought in and only is loyal to the master. But they're not raised with the rest of the pack.
Nice.
I had this question about her role and what she kind of provided, and I love that she's just like in every scene apparently, but she's not. She's like always. She's like Kyber, like boom, like oh cool.
I love doing that. Yeah, I almost had Atlas Al-Ra like nod to Kyber before he left.
Oh, interesting.
But then I had to have him show that. Well, Kyber then follows him, and then he has to lose her later. But I thought it'd be a cool scene if we don't even know Kyber's in the scene, and he nods to Kyber.
I want to do 2 more characters.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'll be faster.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
But there's 2 more characters that are really interesting in Lightbringer to me outside of Kyber. Horatia. Give us a little nugget on Horatia if you can.
Remind me who Horatia is?
Horatia Alvotum.
Okay,
because she has this interesting thing where she really is she's really the true reformer.
Yes,
and she's really interesting because she has this. Her and Lysander seem really melded on this idea and bringing about this idea, and then now say Lysander kind of went further into the end of the spectrum from that. But I'm just curious about just her character, because she kind of pops up as a newer to the book, and she's really interesting.
Horatia is obviously a very kind of bookish, factual person. In many ways, she's been like her brother's keeper, always getting Cicero out of trouble, and that was the way in the youth. Like she was always very serious-minded as a young girl, but not in the way of Virginia. She doesn't have that inner charisma that Virginia does, nor does she want to project like that. She's literally like a political wonk, like an engineering wonk. She loves building things. She loves project management. Her favorite thing her favorite thing is project management, administration. And so, she socialized more with the coppers when she was a girl. Because the Vodum family had to be one of the most efficient core families, simply because they had not an effective. They had one of the harder planets in the core, and so Vodum, they're builders, but they've always been the least of the houses of the conquering, and so her father said basically we have less, so we have to be more efficient, and so she's always had copper friends. She studied at their schools.
Interesting.
They're finishing schools instead of going to rhetorical school. Like her as a politician, she's not particularly adept. She's not imagine like a Barack Obama, which is more of a Virginia, like in terms of rhetoric and popular figure and easy to market and stuff. Virginia's a lot of other things too, so that overly simplifies her. Maybe Abraham Lincoln is a better way of saying Virginia. That's probably better. Virginia's meant to be kind of a mix of Churchill and Lincoln. So some of her speeches are directly inspired by Churchill. And then I think that, how would I say, Horatia is far more of a, not politically, but like a Mitch McConnell, a guy you barely ever see talking, really, but is completely controls the gears of the Senate.
I was caught off guard by that. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think Mitch McConnell, right? But he's much more a mechanic. She's much more of a mechanic, and so I think that has to do with her childhood friends and being drawn to the coppers.
Okay.
And yeah,
Okay, so I love that you actually forgot who she was for a second.
a lot of names.
No, it's a lot of names, but it's adorable at the same time. So
I actually like Horatia a lot. Yeah.
Last one I want to talk about. That's just like, again, little tidbit here. Athena. Seems like she's had a go of it, and she's got. I mean, you could, like a lot of characters, you could probably make a whole story just about her.
Yeah. So one of Athena's friends when she was founding the Daughters of Ares was Rihanna from the graphic novels.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
Making
Rihanna,
that connection.
Yeah, Rihanna in the graphic novels was Severo's aunt, and helped Athena found the Daughters of Ares. I thought that it was not right to bring Rihanna's name into the book series because we haven't mentioned her in the book series yet, but it was meant to be connected in that way. Initially, I had it be Rihanna, but then I thought this is too much about dynasty. If it's Rihanna, it should be a red we don't know.
Okay.
And so instead, Rihanna was like one of her lieutenants, and then helped give Fitchner's orders to her when she was founding the Daughters.
There's so much speculation that it was Rihanna. It was her. And I think, Jeremy, neither you or I have read the third installment yet. Is that thought explored?
To a degree.
Okay. Because we've been Lightbringering for the last several months. We haven't actually got to that one yet. We read the first two and we loved them.
Well, and it's Rihanna's experience in the third one that really put the Daughters of Ares on a more pacifist route, on a route that's not as violent as the Sons of Ares. And the experience she had in book 3 was influential in shaping Athena.
Cool. I'm actually like after this, like I'm kind of like I'm allowing myself to go read that. So like starting tomorrow, I have it. I'm gonna go read it tomorrow.
Cool, man.
So
I hope
I'm
you
like,
enjoy it. Yeah.
But I think
it's the best of the graphic novels.
Oh, nice.
It looks amazing too.
Yeah,
by
it's
the way.
the best looking too as well.
But we knew we were looking forward to this. And I wanted to stay in that Lightbringer headspace.
Oh, sure, man.
Because if I read that, I would be bringing questions to you about that.
Honestly, this is the first time I talked about Lightbringer in a while, so it's funny to jump back into the water because at first my brain was going very slow in Red Rising stuff. I'm like missing all the quotes because I've been taking a sabbatical, but jumping back in soon. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up in a minute, but
Okay.
I want to do this. I guess I want to fanboy
Okay.
on you if that's okay. And I want a record of it. I don't mind. I want to be vulnerable.
Please, let's record this.
Yes.
And
We got 3 minutes.
We have 3 minutes. I'll speak for Jeremy a little bit, and Jeremy, you can jump in. But this is it, man. This book, this Lightbringer experience, to get to talk about it with friends, get to talk to you about it, get to read it multiple times, and I'm going to read it more. It was life changing.
Thank you.
It was so good, dude. And like the Cassius plot was that for me. The Darrow finding faith was that for me. Like there's always this thing about Red Rising that spoke to me in this really primal, like deep way that I can, and you put your stamp on it so hard in this book, and I'm really super appreciative of this for this book and for you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah.
This was a bitch and a half to write.
Yeah, what a journey.
And so I feel like that it connects with you guys on this level really puts, halfway through writing it, I scrapped half of it, right? Or more than half of it. And so it was an act of faith that I was going in the different direction, but the right direction. And so this kind of validation really makes my heart all yummy inside.
Anything to say?
No, I think
We're gonna wrap it up there.
Showered me
Yeah.
with enough praise.
Yeah,
think so.
Jeremy's like, nah, you've got enough, dude.
Jeremy's like,
we just talked about your book for 2 hours.
I want him to be in the right headspace for book 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with Phil.
Snooty.
So
Yeah.
I just appreciate the work that you put forward.
Thank you,
And thank you very much.
You guys helped create a lot of texture to it for me.
Thank you.
I mean, aspects you bring into this interview, even talking about the path as a character, focusing on the theme of mercy. And sometimes it takes someone reminding me of these things in order to really bring them to the forefront and remember what I'm working with here and to make sure it's all given its proper due. So thanks for this and
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you.
so damn thorough.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, until next time. Hail Reaper.
Hail Reaper.
Hail Libertas.
Nice.